thank you, or in the Cape, as it were. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Christo van Rheede. Congratulations on your appointment. You know, often on social media, there will be people that say, why do we still have to say the first black person to do this, or the first black woman to do this? But the point is, in the history, against the backdrop of the history of South Africa, you being the first black executive director of a 116-year-old agricultural industry association is still something that we need to take note of. How do you feel about that?
It's still a bit overwhelming, but I don't think we should dabble too much in the fact that I'm the first black person. I think black in this context doesn't refer to skin color or ethnicity. It's a political term, and I think it's let's allow people to celebrate that. But more so, there's a massive responsibility, obviously, now on me to make sure that we achieve the outcomes that we seek in terms of our national constitution and the broader vision for the agriculture sector.
Now, Christo, you've been a Deputy Executive Director at Agri SA since 2015. Tell us of how you've seen this organization transform. Obviously, those on the outside, there's a certain opinion or a reputation that people have of these organizations who deal in the realm of agriculture in South Africa and all of the politics and the history that goes with it. How have you seen this organization transform during your time working with it?
I think that the most important lesson for me was to have experienced the levels of economic organization. And that is a critical discussion that we need to have in South Africa. Often our focus is so much on political organization, and given our history is understandable. But I think what we can learn from an organization like Agri SA is how farmers at various levels, that's now at grassroots level, at provincial level, and then us at national level, have organized themselves to ensure that they, at the end of the day, not only bring about food security and job creation, but that they create wealth over the long term. And that is something that we need to get right, especially within the bigger black population. Often our focus is completely distorted. And that's when we see some kind of radicalism, because people are hopeless, people are in despair. And we need to ask ourselves, are we doing things the right way, especially when it comes to economic empowerment and economic organization? And what I've seen in Agri SA over the past few years is how they have really committed themselves to issues such as land reform, making sure that you change the perception of the farming industry, and focusing on growing and building an inclusive and prosperous agricultural sector. And for me, those are the building blocks that I want to really strengthen, and on the basis of that, taking the organization forward.
Now, I actually read about your appointment on a platform called Food Form Zanzi, which I follow quite closely, and they tell amazing stories, specifically with a focus on the growing black farming community and the amazing work that they're doing as well. Do you find that in Agri South Africa that these are the representatives that are getting a bigger voice, and there's an understanding, like you've just said, for support needed for them, not because just because it's the right thing to do, but for the future of the country's food security as well?
Absolutely. And remember, our average age of our current crop of farmers are in the region of 60, and some researchers says it's in the region of 65, and that's for us is a very big concern. We need a new generation of farmers. So Agri SA has a couple of programs. One, we've got a national food scheme program, food aid program, and that is to bring about immediate relief to all communities that have been suffering during this COVID pandemic period. Yesterday we were in Bishop Blaivers, the week before that in Laingsburg and in Toes River and these places, and Limpopo, you name it. Agri SA is there with thousands of food parcels that we dish out. Then there's the medium interventions, and that's where we train young black farmers and white farmers. So we've just completed an agricultural leadership program in collaboration with the AgriSA. And then there's the longer term programs, and that's revolves around establishing new farms, especially in communal areas, on state land, making sure that the 5,400 farms of government comes back into operation. But that is quite a challenge because you need funding. People often, try to simplify the issue of land reform in terms of just dishing out land. And it doesn't work that way. If you don't have continuous financial support, continuous extension services, continuous market access, then it's a lost cause. And that's the big focus now that we are embarking upon through our Agri SA enterprises company that we've established.
Now, speaking of which, that's one of the other major changes announced along with your appointment, this Agri SA enterprises that will be headed up by Omri van Zyl. What's the plan there with that new arm that's being established?
I've been responsible for establishing that unit for the past 2 years, and we have explored various opportunities all over the country. So currently there's about 200 opportunities, and we call it opportunity because there's a lot of work before you can translate that opportunity into a viable agricultural project. So currently we have approximately 10 to 20 out of the 200 that is in a position to acquire financial support from the banks and from other sponsors. And that is where the big work now is with the agricultural enterprises. They need to come up with due diligence exercises. They must do the proper planning, the financial planning, because the last thing that we want to see is for black farmers to remain just developing farmers. We need a crop of well-established and successful black commercial farmers. And that will be the focus of Agri SA enterprises, and also establishing partnerships between your more experienced and your less experienced farmers, and bring about a whole lot of other ventures so that we transform the landscape of agriculture in a sustainable and a constructive way.
Christo, if I could just change gears as we bring this conversation to an end on a more personal note, unfortunately. I also know that you started out your life as a music teacher in the 80s at a primary school on the Cape Flats. So you have worn various hats throughout your lifetime, and then going on to get a master's degree in public policy and administration from the Stellenbosch University as well. And a man who is a very close friend of yours also wore various hats, important hats, as it were, as former SA Human Rights Commissioner and the head of the AgriSA, the Afrikaans Language and Culture Association, Dr. Danny Titus, unfortunately passing away at the age of 63 yesterday. My deepest sympathies to you for the loss of your friends. If you don't mind sharing just some thoughts that is with you today as you mourn the loss of your great friend.
What a bright man. And it's so sad that we have lost him. And I am really, my deepest sympathies to his families, and also to everyone out there that I have a very close relationship. So yes, I am very sad about his passing. He has made a tremendous contribution. He was an intellectual. He had a PhD in law. He studied overseas, such a fine example to our communities and to our young people out there. So yes, we celebrate his life amidst all the sadness, and we trust that his family will accept his passing, but that they will remember him for the fine man that he was.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us. And like you, Danny Titus, treading in places where people who look like him were not able to before, and being real transformation warriors. Thank you so much for your time. That's Christo van Rheede, the newly appointed Executive Director at Agri South Africa.